As always, I am your head coach and instructor, Lindsay Troxel. Today, we're going to be talking about creating a life that we love in retirement by intentionally deciding how we shape our identity and what will bring us purpose. So these two topics, they can be particularly heady for some, unless you are intentionally doing this work or finding yourself inside of circles where this topic is coming up in conversation. Our identity and our purpose tend to be something that's just playing in the background, things that are shaped by society or our upbringing or our career. But even when it's playing in the background and not necessarily something that we're particularly conscious of, our identity and purpose do play a profound role in how we show up and what we believe, and even the joy that we're finding in life. So what I hope to walk away from this session today with is, really a different understanding and maybe a different view of what could be for you, a new way of thinking, not just about retirement, but about yourself as well. So this opportunity that you have, this time of transition, it can either be reinventive and very transformative, or it can just simply be the next step. So there's really no wrong way to do this. And I know that that can be sometimes frustrating, but what we talk about today is only a step in that non-exact journey. It's really just a suggestion for where you might start to plot your course. So in the months to come, we're going to be talking more about the other elements that can contribute to making that journey more enjoyable. But I want you to hear me on this, okay? This, like so many other parts of life, it's about the journey. It's not about the destination. So really falling in love with this process, or opening yourself up to maybe falling in love with this process, that's what's going to win you this like non-existent trophy of the retirement world. So there are going to be twists, there's going to be turns, there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be flat tires, there's going to be all of the other road trip journey metaphors and analogies along the way. What really matters the most is that you're getting that you really get back into that retirement dream vehicle, if you will, and that you keep going down the road. So here's what we're going to be focusing on for today. We're going to start out by really understanding a bit about where we are today. So that's going to include things like social conditioning and the personas that we've built based on decades, in many cases, seeing who we are through the lens of what we do. We're also going to talk about what we need to let go of and then possibly grieve as we start to shed some portions of our own old persona. What I hope that you see in this process, in many cases, is that it's far less of a shedding than what we might expect. There's only certain parts of us that we might need to let go of. And a lot of what we've built up over time, we actually get to carry forward with us. We're also going to talk about who we want to become in that next act, and then the process of stepping into that new persona. And then finally, we're going to close out the session with what questions we can be asking ourselves, and maybe doing some coaching for anybody that would be interested, okay? What is personal identity? What comes to mind when you think about your own identity? Really refers to that sense of self that we develop over our lifespan. So it's multifaceted. Yet during transitions in our lives, individuals can sometimes suffer from an identity crisis. And that's where we begin to question our social role and our sense of self. There's so many different transition points in life, right? It's not just retirement that can cause us to have these moments of questioning. It could be, when we're just going through life, transitioning from one job to another. It could be when we lose a loved one. There are so many different times when we experience this identity crisis, and we might question our purpose or our passion. We might experience anxiety or unrest. We might find it difficult to answer questions about yourself. This identity crisis, it causes us to sometimes like question our ability to make decisions. And all of these challenges, they're completely normal, but they don't have to be permanent. We don't need to get stuck inside of this identity crisis that sometimes happens when we're making those transitions. So understanding how to establish a strong retirement identity really starts with getting clear about how we see ourselves today. So identity, as we've discussed already, it's a variety of factors in a whole bunch of different combinations and mixings. There's no one specific formula that we can all subscribe to. We all have our different opinions about what it is. What can be said, however, is that society, how we were raised and what we've experienced, play a massive factor in developing our identity over time. So where we grew up, our religion, our family history, our education, the media. So these are all examples of those external forces that contribute to shaping our identity. Now, during adolescence, and depending on the research that you look at, it can be anywhere from like 12 to 24. So I know that's a pretty big range, but during that adolescence time, establishing our identity through exploring different social roles and then experimenting with various identities is actually a critical part of our development process. Establishing a strong sense of self during those early years really provides us with a foundation to go after our dreams. But because of the importance and significance of those outside factors that we talked about, a large portion of that early self-identity was out of our control. So as adults, however, we have the ability to question our identity and decide really how we want to view ourselves and what that identity does for us. But unless we've gone through an exercise like this, we don't tend to sit down and consciously decide what our identity is. It's just kind of happening in the background. So we need to do that work. So I want to ask yourself the question here, and I, again, throw it onto either a piece of paper or put it directly into the chat. I want you to ask yourself, like, how do I identify? What are 10 characteristics about myself that make up my identity? Okay, so just take a moment here and do that. So again, either write it down, you can put them directly into the chat, however you want to go about it. There's no wrong answer. Just go with it. What you might even find is that there's more than 10 things. When I went through this process, I was like, gosh, this is really hard to just narrow it down to 10. All right, so let's go ahead and chat a couple of those in. So I'm going to pull the chat back over here. And as I'm waiting for you to put some of your answers in, I'm going to give you some of mine. So, as I said, I went through this process in order to be a part of the activity. And so mine are first, human. The first thing that I claim to my identity is I'm human. And that means so many different things to me. Human in the sense that I'm not perfect, I'm flawed, I have massive emotions, I am more than any other thing, any other piece of my identity that I could potentially lose along the way or change along the way, my humanness stays with me. Edward Gorey had a quote. My mom is a huge Edward Gorey fan, but he had a quote about how he is a person first. Above all else, he is a person. He is not, he's not a writer or an illustrator. He's a person. The things that he does, he is a person who it happens to be a writer and an illustrator. But the first thing in his kind of mind is that he's a person. So that was also the first thing that I put down. I also am strong. I'm a coach. I'm neurodivergent. I'm socially conscious. I am, if some of you happen to be on our career call, I know we're on the retirement call, but some of you might have been on the career call as well. I affectionately refer to myself as a designer hippie. So that's a claim that I make to my identity. I'm also a nature lover and a music lover and a partner and a friend and a dog mom. So those are some of the parts of my identity that I claim. So let me read some of these that are in the chat. All right. So I'm a woman, a mother, a wife, a sister, a daughter, a friend, loving, athletic, knowledge seeker. I love the amazing feminine energy that comes out of that one. Thank you for sharing. I'm a father, doctor, man, science, friend, funny, strong, smart, adventurous. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. All right. Lost. Woo, I just expanded the window a little too much for me. Okay, there we go. Lost, scattered, mother, wife, my occupation, tired, hopeful, faith. Thank you for sharing that. Mother, wife, friend, social, animal lover, independent, wine lover. Yes. Fabulous. Love it. So we are, as you can see, a multifaceted group here. We aren't just one defined thing. We aren't just our careers. For me, yes, I had coach in the list, but I was a coach long before I was a coach. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be a coach long after I retire. It's part of who I am. And that's okay, but it doesn't exclusively define me. And there's so much more that makes up who I am. So as you go through that process and really think about who you are and what defines you, what are those characteristics? Claim them for yourself. That's the first part of the process, okay? Now, as we step into the second part of this identity process, I want you to think about what part of your identity you want to release as we go into retirement, okay? And then on the flip side, what are the parts that you want to make sure that you hold on to, okay? So who might you want to become that you haven't necessarily yet had the opportunity to be? That's another question that I like to ask myself, is this idea of what am I becoming? Who am I becoming? What am I stepping into that I haven't had the opportunity to do? I haven't had the opportunity to test out, or even things like how does the future and how do I show up in the future, and what does the world in the future need of me? Like all this idea of becoming and the possibilities of something that hasn't yet arrived for us. It's really beautiful to put ourselves into that future place and just think about all of the possibilities, okay? So this is your chance to really redefine yourself, however it is that you want to be. We've got another comment in here, so let me go ahead and read that. I want to release my attachment to my occupation. I'm a doctor, but more importantly, I'm a healer. That's the part that I want to hold on to. That's the part that's never going to change. The title can go. I love that. Okay, so now we're starting to see that we can let go of certain parts of our existing identity and how we can pull through the parts that are really important. Excuse me. Hold on one second. So I'd love to see in this next part for you how the idea of purpose and identity intertwine with one another and what you can bring in terms of that element of healer into this next phase of your journey. Okay, another comment in here. I want to let go of the negative persona that I've taken around, that I have taken on around confusion, being scattered and tired, and this bit about my ADD. I've been telling myself that I don't know who I am, but this is helping me see that I've been defining myself as all those negative things. I'm ready to drop it. This is really helpful. Well, I'm so glad. You aren't alone. You know, when we think about the way that we talk to ourselves, when we take on and start claiming elements of, anytime that we add I am into a sentence, it's very powerful. And sometimes we don't pay attention to the I am statements that can be negative or harmful. So, there's a reason that I am starts with all of the affirmations that you hear. Whenever you're trying to bring something and attract something to you, you always start with I am, right? So when you're saying something like, I am tired, or let's see some of the other stuff that you had in there, even confusion. So, I've been telling myself that I don't know who I am. So I don't know who I am is just as powerful, right? So again, going back, if you are saying things like, I am tired, I am confused, or my mother always says, I'm so busy, I am busy, like as if that's a part of her persona. So, I am lost. All of those attachments that we have and the definitions that we're putting on ourselves can cause us non-consciously to be essentially casting a vote for that version of ourselves. Like, that's who I'm saying that I am. So when we're thinking about this, I would offer this advice and just, possibility for you. Instead of the I ams, think about, I am someone who is currently experiencing feeling tired, or I am experiencing confusion. So that qualifier in between, where you've got the I am and then the qualifier of experiencing, and then you're talking about the situation that you are experiencing, that will allow you to kind of separate yourself from the situation. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Let's see, I'm going to move the chat back over here. So let's talk about purpose. We just talked about identity and what we can claim for ourselves and what it is that we might want to let go of and what we want to keep. Now let's talk about how we look at purpose. And I will admit that purpose can kind of be this very nebulous concept, especially when you're defining it as the meaning inside of your life. So if anyone out there has actually, figured out the meaning of life, I'd love to have a side conversation with you, but if you haven't, that's okay too. So what I'd like to tell you about purpose is, purpose, again, just like identity, can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So since we've got a chatty group today, I want you to tell me a little bit about what you think of when you think of purpose. What does it mean to you? And what does specifically purpose and retirement mean to you? So if you could share, that would be great. All right, so pull this back over here. Let's see. All right, not too chatty on this topic. So I've got, in general, or for you, either one, it doesn't matter. If you want to share what you think that purpose and retirement means in general, that's great. Or specifically, if there's an element of purpose for you that you'd like to share, that's fine as well. Okay, so we've got one in here. So it's the mark that you leave behind. Yep, I like that. That can be interpreted very broadly. It can be anything from maybe a simple conversation that you're having and the ripple effects of that conversation. It could be the actual mark that you leave on the world and something that you do that impacts the future of society. So it's pretty broad, but I like that. We also have in here your code. Okay, I'd love for you to say more about that so that I can understand that one a little bit deeper. Also, so it's what drives you, your commitment, your connection to others. Yeah, I love that. It's why you get out of bed in the morning. Absolutely. Okay, your code, meaning how you treat others and how you make them feel, your way of being. Got it. Love it. Yep. Your interests, your goals, your joy, your tasks. 100%. Okay, now I kind of feel like you guys are just giving me the list that I've got here on the screen, which is fine. I do love that last one, particularly because we tend to think about purpose as being this deep, maybe like internal driver. But it doesn't always have to be. It can be the simple things. So it can either go to that side. In general, it's also fulfillment. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. So again, you've got the larger, more complex internal driving systems or a connection to something that's bigger than ourselves, or it can simply be the things on our list that need to get done on a regular basis. Having a nice balance of the two is really what I consider to be ideal. So there's plenty of research that's out there that says that when you find a purpose that focuses externally, it can actually help keep you connected. We tend to be better at keeping commitments to others than we are to keeping them to ourselves, but it doesn't have to be us saving the world. Okay. I know I talk a lot about Andrew Huberman and his podcasts. He's just got great stuff. So if you haven't checked him out, please do so. I also know that I've talked a lot about the episode on dopamine with Dr. Anna Lembke. They were talking in that episode about this idea of purpose and how society is so jacked up, right? We want more, bigger, faster, better, higher. So even the concept of finding purpose for people has gotten blown way out of proportion. And the reality of the situation is that life is not always meant to be exciting or fulfilling. Sometimes it's just boring. And I know that that's hard for us to grasp and really take in sometimes. But the deal is that, we've kind of come to believe that we're entitled to living this amazing life, and that we've, just built this society that's chasing pleasure 24/7. That not only applies in pre-retirement, but also in retirement. So we're thinking that we're always supposed to be stimulated or we're always supposed to be feeling great. And that's just not the case. Life is going to be 50-50. So sometimes things are going to be awesome and sometimes things are going to be boring, or sometimes things are just not going to be good at all. So when we're trying to figure out what our purpose is, and we're trying to figure out if, things are driving us forward, sometimes you're just going to try to figure out if you enjoy what you're doing or not. That could be as simple as it is. Sometimes our purpose is just going to be finding an opportunity to make somebody smile, instead of trying to figure out how we're going to replace our entire career and have it go back to the same level of fulfilling or meaning that we had pre-retirement. So I want you to think about how you can bring new meaning and fulfillment into your life at this new level, but I also want you to be realistic. And I want you to know that there's going to be a period of adjustment here. So you're going to go from working 8, maybe 12 hours a day, maybe more, maybe less, for potentially 40 plus years. You've built up some habits over that time that are going to take some time to unwind. And thinking you're going to jump right into retirement without skipping a beat is completely unrealistic. I want you to be patient with yourselves, and I want you to open up your mind to being a beginner again. That's one of the most important steps in this entire process. It will get to a place where you're finding joy and fulfillment if you're doing this work, but it may not be this like high dose of dopamine and this surge in excitement that you might be hoping and expecting for, at least at first. Okay, so I've got another question in here, or a comment. So let's see this. This is all great, but how do we figure out what we enjoy doing or might find fulfilling that we can commit to? In your session last week, you talked about the difference between being committed versus interested. I feel like I'm interested in a ton, but not really committed to anything. I lose interest easily, and I find myself right back to where I started without any specific thing that's sparking joy. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you asked that question. I'm not sure if you are the person that left a comment on the exit survey last week, or if you're somebody else. I feel like there are multiple people having this same thought and the same feelings. My partner and I were actually talking about this very topic in the car the other day. So here's the deal. And there's really two parts to this, okay? So the first thing that we need to remember is that we first need to just get clear on what commitment is. So commitments are those no matter what things. So even if we fall off the wagon, we get back on, we recommit, right? Interests, on the other hand, are things that we might dabble in when it's convenient for us, that we enjoy doing, but when it's raining outside, we're not going to go for the run. When it's gray, we might not get in the car and go to the gym if we're just interested in it versus if we're committed to it. Okay. So you'll see on the list over here on the right-hand side of your screen that purpose has room for both. We've got the commitments in there, but we also have the interests. The problem that I see most often is when we mix the two. Okay. So when we tell ourselves that we're committed to something that we're actually only interested in, and then we beat ourselves up for not doing what we said that we wanted to do. We also need to recognize that the commitments aren't always a linear process. And it's actually a bunch of like little cycles as you are going, where you keep recommitting to yourself over and over and over and over again. So it's not just that you make a commitment and then you are off to the races. For some people it is, for some things, absolutely. But for most of us, we've got to recommit over and over and over. That's like this ongoing process. So now you had the other part of your question here, right? And let me go back and make sure I have this right. So how do we figure out what we enjoy doing or might find fulfilling that we can commit to, which is kind of what we're getting into right here. Okay. Oh wait, one final thought here on the commitment and dopamine and the pleasure pain scale. It's always about the dopamine. It always comes back to the dopamine, doesn't it? So commitment isn't always pleasurable. And I think that's really important for us to remember. So oftentimes it tips the pain scale in a very uncomfortable direction. The result is that the adverse pleasure and the reward that you experience is that much greater than from something that you're only interested in. So let me give you an example here. Having children, okay? Pleasure, pain. There is a lot of pain, but the pain that you experience makes the pleasure that much better. Or cold plunging. So cold plunging for 20 minutes every single day. That's incredibly painful, but the pleasure that you experience as a result of doing the cold plunge is off the charts. Or something like climbing Mount Everest. That's not something that you're just interested in. You got to be committed to that. There's so much pain involved in it, but the pleasure that you experience as a result of meeting that commitment is going to be great. Let's see. We've got another comment in here, so I just want to read this. So going into retirement, I feel I will judge my day's success by what projects or tasks I completed for the day. On a typical weekend, I have a list and I take pride in checking off items, and I feel guilty if not complete. If I don't wake up with a long list of things to do, I worry that I will not find what my real purpose is and feel like a failure. So if I don't wake up with a long list of things to do, I really, yeah. So this is also going back to that idea of boredom, right? Sometimes we just need to feel boredom. And I know that's not super exciting for anybody to hear, but it's true. So if we have this belief system that we always have to be busy, and that being busy and working hard is what equals success, that's a story that we've told ourselves. And that's probably been ingrained with us from childhood. And we've learned it and been passed down all of that idea from the people that we've seen growing up. So just thinking about how you want to look at retirement, that can also be very helpful here. So making that conscious decision ahead of time that when I don't have anything on my to-do list, what might I want to fill my free time with? And what am I considering to be a successful day? And so the other piece in here is I will worry that I won't find my real purpose and feel like a failure. So we're going to talk a lot about finding purpose here in just a second, okay? So we're going to ask a ton of different questions that will help you hone in on what your purpose is. Okay. That might be very helpful for you as well. So finding something to be committed to and finding that purpose that can bring you pleasure and fulfillment, it's not easy. Okay. It doesn't also mean that it's not going to be scary, right? You're going to have to go through this process of doing something that you've never done before. And most commitments are typically scary. Most, if you are really finding your purpose, it probably means that you're going to have a growth mindset. Probably means that you're going to have to try a couple of things and realize that, nope, that's not it. You're probably going to have to fail at certain things, right? So how do we figure out what it is that we might enjoy doing? Because this is coaching, right? And a lot of you have been on our other sessions. You probably have already realized that we're going to ask a ton of really powerful questions. So let's go ahead and dive into some of those questions. I've got 9 questions for you that will help you to define your purpose, okay? So number 1, what will I miss from my current work situation and how will I replace it? Another way to ask this question might be, what do I love from my pre-retirement life that I want to continue? Or another way might be, what skills can I repurpose from my career and bring into my retirement? Okay. So maybe you were a trial attorney. Let's say that you were a trial attorney and you loved the law, but you didn't necessarily love the fast-paced element and you're really looking forward to retirement, but you didn't want to lose that connection to the law. So how could you repurpose that love for the law into something a bit more low-key? Maybe you do something that's in the non-for-profit space. Maybe you do some mentoring. Okay. Maybe you're a doctor. I know you're out there because you put your information into the chat, right? So I'm talking to you. So you said that you loved healing, right? So how can you find ways to bring healing into what you're going to continue to offer? Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me pull the chat over. You just put something in here. So yeah, that's great. I think that I want to do mission trips to impoverished countries. That's great. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here. How can you repurpose something that you don't want to lose? Okay, we've got another one. Mentor and leadership. I would like to carry that over. I enjoy working alongside others to reach their goals. Fantastic. So start thinking about in what areas. Is there something specific that you want to mentor on? Is there an area of leadership that you have been particularly successful in that you feel like you could bring that skill set to the table? Absolutely. So think about that, right? Think about the ways that we can bring forward some of the stuff that we've already done and continue to have that in our retirement world. Number 2, this is one of the big ones. How do I create social engagement outside of work? So lack of social engagement as we age is equivalent, just shocker and awe here. So lack of social engagement is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, 15, okay? It increases your chance of dying from literally anything by 50%, 50. So this is a big problem. When we are working, we have social circles that are naturally built in. It was really challenging during the pandemic when we were having all of the social distancing and we were working virtually. And for some people, that's still kind of the case. But for most people, during their working years, they have those natural built-in social circles. So what are we going to do in order to bring that out into our retirement space? What are we currently doing that allows us to be engaged outside of work? And what might we want to do that we aren't currently doing? I got to be honest, this is the one that's going to kill me. I love being alone. So this is something that I think about constantly because I'm not necessarily naturally gravitating towards opportunities to create social engagement outside of work. I love spending time by myself. All right, number 3. So what are my serious pursuits outside of work? Another way to think about this is, what am I passionate about? I want you to go back to the identity exercise, and this can help you to come up with some ideas if you're struggling. So for me specifically, I said that part of my identity is that I love nature and I love music. I also love camping, right? That's part of the nature. I would say that it's a serious passion of mine. I get really into figuring out, what do we need to bring in order to have everything that we want. In the career session, I was talking about thinking about my future self and putting myself, or maybe that was in the life one, but talking about how I always thank Lindsay, like past Lindsay, and I'll think about, what does future Lindsay need? And so I get really into this idea of, what do we need when we go camping? I find a lot of purpose in it. It's not overly connected to a bigger meaning in life, but you know what? I can get down with it. So think about what you are passionate about. What are your serious pursuits outside of work? Think about where you might want to try something new, that even if you haven't had that serious pursuit. We're going to talk a little bit about the things that you've been interested in but haven't tried yet in just a moment. But I want you to think about this whole process here from this place of abundance instead of scarcity. Okay. This is an opportunity. And sometimes when we go through this process, we might look at the negative and say, you know what, I can't answer this question. There's nothing that I'm passionate about. I don't know where this will go. But I want you to come at this from abundance and open yourself up. And maybe some of these following questions will help jog you into this place where you actually can come up with a passion or a pursuit that's outside of work that you feel serious about. Okay. So hold on. All right. Next question. Just pull up this comment here. So I'm assuming this is serious pursuits outside of work. So volunteering, okay, good. Volunteering at a new level because of more time. Yeah. So you might have this serious pursuit that when you look at it, because of time, it doesn't look all that serious. You haven't been able to spend a serious amount of time, but the passion that you have behind it is serious. So now that you've got all of this newfound time, you can go deeper. Love that. Okay, so what am I good at? So this question, what I want you to do here is just a brain dump, okay? And all of these questions and more are inside of the workbook that I've created for you for this month. So know that, what we're doing right now is we're going deeper into the concepts and the ideas so that when you sit down, you know what it is that you need to be answering. But you've got all of these written down in the workbook so you can do this work after our session. So what I want you to do is just a brain dump, okay? Don't judge yourself. I want you to list all of the things that maybe people have complimented you on. Think about the things that you do a better job than others at. When you mix the answers of this with some of the other questions that we're going to see here in just a moment, that's when you start to see this sweet spot start to converge upon itself, where you might create something for yourself in retirement that you never expected. So maybe you're really great at organizing events. I love organizing events. Do I get to do a lot of it? No, but I'm really, really good at it. I also love organizing my cupboards and cabinets. So, in the future, I definitely could see myself doing something in the world of organization as just a pastime, something that might be a hobby to keep me going. Maybe you're great at building relationships, or you're great at fundraising, or building workout plans, or writing, or yoga, or drawing, like whatever it is. What's your thing? Just do an entire mind dump, okay? This is really going to start to help opening up those possibilities for you. And like I said, you'll start to mix and match certain things. So what am I really good at? with something that I've never tried before, and then something that the world could use, that the world needs, something that I can make some extra money at. That's this concept of ikigai, right? The Japanese concept of finding the things that you're passionate about, the things you're really good at, the things that the world needs from you, the things that you can actually get paid for. So coming up with some of these ideas will help you to bring it all together. Number 5. What do I want to do that I've never had time to do? Or said another way, what am I interested in that I've never tried? So there are so many things that I tell myself that I would do if I had more time. I just don't have the time right now. So now is the time to dust that list off. Do you want to improve your health? Do you want to go on a cruise? Do you want to work at a job that wouldn't have necessarily paid the bills? For me, quite frankly, I would love to work at a roller skating rink or maybe an ice cream shop or like a plant store, but none of those things are going to pay my bills, right? So those are the things that I reserve till later in life when I'm like, this is going to be fun. I've never tried it before, but I definitely would love to. Maybe you want to work as a park ranger or a camp host. Like, what's on your list? What's going to be something that you could try? All right, number 6. I love this question. Okay. So what is something that I once loved, but I gave up in pursuit for more important initiatives? Okay. So I want you to go back to like the days gone by. Put yourself back into your younger self and think about what were your passions then when you were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and the world was ahead of you. Nobody had beat you down yet. You hadn't been told no a million times. You didn't have major responsibilities. What were some of the things that you were passionate about back then? Okay. Maybe you loved playing the guitar and you had a band and you wanted to go on the road with that band, but it was completely impractical. Maybe it's time to get the band back together. I had one of my clients just go through this process. He was like, Lindsay, I loved playing the guitar with my band. I was like, awesome. Are those band members still around? Yeah, we occasionally get together and hang out. I was like, cool. Do you think that maybe you could go out and play some gigs? And he was like, oh, that didn't even occur to me. Yeah, I think we could. And so now he's actually got some local gigs in the LA area and he's having a blast. They actually got something on. He's originally from Ohio, so they have a gig in Ohio as well. So they're on the road and they're touring and he's loving it. Maybe you loved glass blowing, but when the kids came, it was just going to be too dangerous an activity to have around. Maybe you can get back in and start doing an apprenticeship. Maybe you just take it up as a hobby. Maybe you had an early passion for horses and maybe now you are very passionate about helping kids with unique needs, right? Maybe you marry the two of those things together and work at a retreat that uses horse therapy, equine therapy, right? So there's so many ways to look at this. So resurrecting something that you haven't thought about in years can be a really fun way to breathe new life into your passions. All right, we've got a couple more here. So number 7, I shared this concept on our last session. So when we were talking about the idea of ikigai and how to take that to the next level. So the question is, what can I engage in that will allow me to start small and improve over time? So this is something, cooking. Is that something that you loved previously, but then stopped doing? Or is that something that will allow you to start small and improve over time? You can throw that into the chat. So we want to find ways here to try new things and really become a beginner again. So this will allow us to keep our mind sharp as we age. And it actually keeps our mind sharp yet plastic, that idea of neuroplasticity. And it allows us to stay healthy, have our brain stay healthy as we age. So if we try something and we're not really great at it, what can we evolve into over time? In future sessions, actually next month, we're going to be talking a lot about health and staying healthy as we age. And so we're going to be talking about our physical health and our mental health and what we need to be doing in order to stay at the tip top of our game. But part of this here is that we're not always necessarily engaging in things that we're good at. Okay. If we're just trying things that we're good at, we're not using the parts of our brain that will allow us to stay sharp and healthy. Okay. So we have to try things that we aren't good at. We have to find ways to be a beginner and evolve over time. That's something that's really important. So if we are worried about failing, and we have that fear of failing at something, then we never will open ourselves up to this possibility of trying on something new that potentially we could fall in love with. If we judge ourselves, then we'll stay small. Corey and I just started playing racquetball, and I am so bad at racquetball, so bad. In fact, I'm so bad that we cannot actually keep score. What we do is we just go in there and we hit the ball, and we have the best time. And we've been doing it for a little while now. And what I will say is that I have excelled. Like, I have gotten so much better in the short period of time. I'm not good, but when I started, I was really, really bad. And so previously, I might have gone into that with this, fixed mindset of, I've got to be good. I've got to show up and, prove myself in front of my partner that I'm not just ridiculous. But instead, we went into it with this playful mindset, and we're evolving over time. And as a result, it's helping me to show up in other areas of my life where I might not necessarily be good right away, but I'm willing to try it on anyway. Okay. All right. So number 8, what is the smallest contribution I can make that will have an impact on myself and others? So this goes back to this idea that sometimes things are going to be boring. Okay. So think about the smallest impact that you can make. Sometimes it's not about climbing a mountain or feeding the hungry. Sometimes it's about taking out the trash or fixing the gutter or doing the laundry or putting the dishes away or going to the gym, right? These tiny purposes sometimes can matter more than anything else in the long run. So we want to look at the mundane as well. We want to look at how we can have an impact. And number 9, this is the final question for you. And I know that it's 5 questions, but it's really just one concept here. What do you want to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis? I have some clients where we go through these 5 questions and these 5 questions alone, and that's all they need. They don't need the other questions, because when they sit down, they find, you know what, there are plenty of things that I actually want to be doing on a regular basis that are on my list, and I can find joy and fulfillment in these things. Now, if you want to develop other areas, all of those other questions that we just went through are going to help you to do that. Okay, that's something you can do. But you also can get plenty out of just asking yourself these questions. This is something that should not be skipped. Do not underestimate the power of coming up with a simple plan. All right. With this whole process, right, what this all comes down to is really, what are you willing to try? What kinds of experiments can you create to test out to see what you might be interested in? How many things are you willing to try in the pursuit of finding your passion and finding your purpose? The process of becoming is this next version of yourself. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process, as we talked about before. It's a journey. It's not the destination. So what we really want to do is fall in love with the journey. Otherwise, the destination is going to come sooner than we might like. And the questions from our sessions today, all of those will help you to determine what creating that journey will be. Again, all of them are located inside of your workbook. I highly recommend that you print it and put pen to paper. There's a lot to be said about getting your physical thoughts out onto paper. However, whatever way is best for you is best for you.